Hello and welcome along to another episode of this FM19 story, The Head Coach with me, Daniel. It's Season 7, Episode 6, and today we'll be moving clubs after an overwhelming winner in the poll in the last episode. It's Sunday morning as I'm recording this, just before 11 o'clock, and Newcastle United have won 18 out of the 24 votes. 3/4 of you voted for Newcastle United, so I don't really have a choice, do I? It was the one I was probably edging towards ahead of Barnsley, but there was just that little bit of me that wanted to stay and complete the job. But as Nathan Jones, in charge of my beloved Luton Town, proved, there's no loyalty in football anymore, even if you're top of the league. And of course, since then, Brendan Rodgers has done it in real life too, so it doesn't look like I'm going to be making the worst of decisions out of the three. But I think it's only fair that we respect Barnsley before we go. They have been probably the biggest step up in our managerial career so far, giving us a chance to move up to the Championship, keeping us in a job when we underachieved slightly in our first half a season there, don't forget. We took over in around February time. We kept them up, but we didn't get to that mid-table position. They kept us on board, and we have rewarded them ever since, getting in the top half last season and going to top of the league this year. We've just beaten Slough for the longest we've stayed at a club, so it's certainly one we'll remember fondly, and we need to talk about a few of the players that have served us so well. Hopefully a couple of them will move to Newcastle eventually. I know a couple of you have said to raid Newcastle, but obviously in this one we don't have a say in transfers, so it will just be whether the director of football chooses to or not. But with Newcastle, if the same director of football stays, it's very much a possibility, as they'd been chasing Niall Goodwin for some time in particular, and a couple of the other first team players too. So let's go and have a look at the squad. We obviously leave Barnsley 9 points clear of third place, with the best goal difference in the league by 18, so we're certainly playing entertaining football. We've scored the most goals in the league, conceded the second least, and then we've got the best record for yellow cards with a couple of others too. No red cards and a really decent attendance. The only problem with this club, obviously we are top of the league and we're still not selling out the ground every week, which shows that we are probably towards the roof of where this club's expectations are. Even if we go up, we'll probably be battling relegation. Whereas with Newcastle, as some of you have mentioned, 50,000 in every week, they're already a mid-table established Premier League side in this game, and we can take them towards that top 6 if we get the investment later down the line. So let's go and look at the Barnsley players, give them one last goodbye. There's a couple of players I want to mention, but I want to go to Niall Goodwin first, the obvious one. One of the main reasons I enjoyed this stint of the career is because they had some homegrown players that had come through the academy and were making it to the first team. And none of them have been more important than Goodwin. A 7.4 rating, just 21 years of age, an England under-21 international, a goal-scoring midfielder, and a player that Newcastle have tried to sign before. I don't know if he's wanted by them at the moment, he's not, but hopefully in the future that'll be the case. We'll take off his asking price now and leave it back to Dougie Freedman, who served us so well. We'll confirm those changes, and he's a man that we're very much looking forward to hopefully reuniting with in the future. The other one that's broke into the team this year is Tom Burton. He's a 3-star centre-half with 5-star potential. Another England under-21 player and a really good young centre-half with plenty of potential for the future. So I hope he does well as well. And then they've got Alex Jackson, probably not going to make it higher than Championship level, but he's done a really good job for them and he's a really consistent, versatile defender. Certainly a quality player, and we're very much looking forward to seeing his development too. In terms of the others, we obviously had Andrew Edwards on loan this season on the right wing. He's injured at the moment, but he'd been brilliant. Jack Rooney, who'd come in up front, a goal scorer, doing well, nearly 1 in 2 for us. He's been a superstar too, and one of the biggest differences between last season and this. Liam Lindsay, the captain at centre-half, an absolute stalwart all season. A wonderful player. At 29, he's at his peak, and I hope he gets to lead this side to the Premier League. If the board make as good a decision as they did to appoint me, then hopefully he'll be able to do that. 307 league appearances for Barnsley, spent the bulk of his career here, and it's the only club in England he's played for since his younger days in Scotland. A wonderful pro he's been, and I really hope he gets the reward he deserves. The other two I want to mention, Joe Lumley, the goalkeeper, a bit of an unsung hero for us, 12 clean sheets in 23 league games, conceding at less than 1 a game, and he's been absolutely brilliant for us, a really solid keeper. He had a bit of a wobbly the first summer we were here because he didn't get yet to go to Celtic, but I hope this season he can see out the year. Although, have a look at that. He's already got interest from Newcastle from the director of football, so we could be seeing Joe Lumley soon as well. I certainly wouldn't complain about that. Although I would prefer that they don't steal players from Barnsley in January, because we really want to see them get promoted. The last one I want to mention is another man signed in the summer, Florinal Coman. He's been a brilliant left winger for us. He's got 10 goals in 23 games and 9 assists as well. I know he scored a couple of penalties, 3 in fact, but that's 19 goals he's directly contributed towards in 23 appearances, and the front three this year have been revolutionary for the club. So I hope with Edwards' injury they can still go up. They've been a really good side and I've really enjoyed managing them. But as is the hard part of this series so far, we've seen it was easy to leave Hemel Hempstead and Dungannon. We were sacked but were delighted to move on to other clubs. But as we had with Slough, and now we're particularly having with Barnsley, sometimes it is hard to move on, even though you know the move's realistic. So we've got our approach from Newcastle, we delayed the one from Wolves and we're obviously not going to take it. They're offering us 40,000 a week, so we're just going to try and get as much as possible. We'll go up to 50, we've got a 3-year deal which is nice and secure. I know it's about 2.5 now, but it'll still be a big payoff. They're obviously looking at cup competitions because the Carabao Cup's got a big payoff, so we'll lift that a little bit in the hope that we can attack that competition. And the relegation wage drop we want to go down just to protect our contract a bit. Why have they pushed our deal back now? We still want a 3-year deal, but they're offering us 50 grand a week, which is important. Let's see if we can get it over the line. They want to go back to 2 years. I'm not sure if we take it or not. I think we probably do in the grand scheme of things, because we've still got a reputation that we could get a good job afterwards. So let's just drop it down. We're going to try once more for 3 years. If not, we'll stick with 2, but we'll drop the relegation wage drop to 20%. Let's see if they agree. That they have. So 50,000 a week. We've times our wage by over 4. We were on 12 grand at Barnsley, and now we're going all the way up to 50. They're expecting mid-table in the Premier League, which is where they are at the moment. They've got no transfer budget to offer us, as we've mentioned, but that's because they've spent a bit during the summer. And then the wage budget is 2.2, which we'll have a look at in a moment to see how that relates to their current usage. But we're obviously going to finalise this deal. It's our final farewell to Barnsley, so a massive thank you to all the players and staff there. They've been absolutely sensational. But it is time to make our first jump to the Premier League. Midway through Season 7 is absolutely brilliant for that. I know we only did a short series in FM19, but at the end of Season 6 in that one, we'd only just reached Ross County fighting survival in the Scottish Premier League, having left Northern Ireland, following stints in the National League and National League South. So this has really been a step up this year. Although we had 2 really dodgy spells at the start of the series, our rise since has been meteoric, and we've essentially gone from the bottom to the Premier League in 5 seasons now. So let's go and meet the squad at Newcastle. We'll be back in a moment for our formal induction. Here we go then, we're in charge of Newcastle United in the Premier League. Obviously, as I mentioned in the last episode, it's not the first time I've managed them in this edition of the game. We also managed them in our FM19 Touch series, the one we did at Christmas as a special mini-series. I've just seen here as well, they're in the Carabao Cup semi-final. I know that we've probably got the second worst squad out of them, but if we could draw Huddersfield, my first action could be taking them to a cup final. So let's go and do that first, ignore the induction. Hopefully we can get this Huddersfield tie. Cross your fingers, everyone. Oh, it's Liverpool. So we've got Chelsea, and the first thing we're going to do is probably lose in the Carabao Cup semi-final. But either way, what a fantastic thing to have on your CV straight away. We've got Chelsea over 2 legs. It's going to be a tough one, but hopefully we can do ourselves justice. And by then we might have even got a player or 2, depending on what we've got at the club. Let's have a look at the injury update. Muto's out injured. Perez and a few others with recurring injuries. Lascelles the skipper and Gylfi Sigurdsson who's at the club. They've got a very experienced squad, but they have got a couple of youngsters as we looked at in the last episode. The transfer obligations, there's 1 future transfer going out, and then so many youngsters out on loan, but as we saw in the last episode, not many of them look particularly special. Welcome to Newcastle. We'll do the meetings in a moment, but most importantly for us, we want to look at how much of the wage budget is left, and I'm a little bit happier now. It's 250,000. That means we could get in a couple of good free agents, or we could allow our director of football to adjust the budgets and sign 1 proper player. So just for argument's sake, let's see if we move the wage budget half the way back. That would then give us £5 or £6 million to spend, plus a little bit of a signing on fee, meaning we could get a decent squad player if need be. There's a sell-on clause for Chris Mepham. That's £1.86 million from Everton. He was sold for £38 million, and he's 27 years of age now. And he's a decent centre-half, but he's nothing special. We'll just accept that just so the Director of Football's got plenty to play with. To my knowledge, the Director of Football isn't able to accept or reject these in FM. Please tell me if you know that's wrong, but I've never seen it happen if I've not been in control of it. So we've got a couple of million in the bank there as well, so hopefully that will help him out in January. We've got to go and meet our Director of Football before we meet the squad, because they're arguably the most important person at the club when we play this series. So let's go and have a look at who it is. We haven't got one yet. That's going to be something we need to do before January. We've got 10 days to get someone in. That's going to be particularly important. We've got a Spanish assistant manager, and it looks like one of the leftovers from Rafa's spell here at the start of the game. He's really good mentally and he's got decent knowledge. As a coach, he's okay, but I need that help on the sideline. So hopefully he'll be able to do that for me, with his tactical knowledge helping out too. He was caretaker manager before we took over, so hopefully he'll know the squad inside out as well. The head of youth development is Joe Joyce. He's really good at working with youngsters and again has excellent tactical knowledge. So he's someone I really trust to bring players into their club, which is good as we haven't got a say in his role, but hopefully he'll continue to do well for us. I'm just looking at the highest paid scout there on $9,000 a week, Patrick Montgomery, and he's absolutely useless. I know he's only 31 and he'll probably become very good. He looks like an exceptional data analyst, but as a scout he's not really doing much at all, and that one seems a little bit strange. But obviously we can't do anything about that in this series. They've still got Christian Karambou. He used to be at Arsenal as a scout and was always good, and it remains the case in this one too. The chief scout Nixon, he's got good player potential and ability judgment as well. So there's plenty of good people there to make sure good players come into the club. But most importantly, let's go and meet the squad. We'll try and work out what sort of tactic we're going to play, and then we'll come back in the next episode for our first game at the club and to meet our tactic in full. So our first game at the club is at home to Chelsea, followed by an away game against Liverpool. Certainly not the easiest of starts, but then we've got 2 winnable home games against Ipswich and Fulham before the FA Cup third round. So I'm even tempted to risk resting players against Liverpool just to make sure we get 6 points on the board after that. But let's go and look at the players. We'll try and find each position and see if we've got anyone talented there. Is there anyone in the under-23s worth promoting? The highest is 2.5 stars, so we'll get that one up to the first team, and the under-18s doesn't have anyone special. So let's go to the squad. We'll look at the assistant star ratings. As we've already seen, he's got decent judgment. So for the reports, we'll go in position order. We've got a 4-star keeper in David Raya. He's definitely the best at the club, the former Blackburn man, and I'll tell you what, he's become one hell of a keeper. An excellent pro and certainly good Premier League level. We'll be happy to have him at the club. The sub is Broger, a 1.5 star ability keeper. I was going to say he's very much a one for the future here, but he's only got 2.5 star potential, so possibly is almost at the ceiling of his development. He'll do a job for the next 10 days, but let's very much hope David Raya doesn't get injured. In defence, we've got a nice balance of positions. No defenders under the age of 30, which is a slight concern, particularly in central areas. We've got Jamal Lascelles is the pick of the bunch. 4-star ability, 4-star potential. He's been at Newcastle for over a decade, and he's going to be an absolute stalwart for us now. I'd assume he's still the captain. If not, he'll certainly be a contender under my stewardship. But a very good player, and we're very much happy to have him here. He's going to be joined by Terence Congolo, a centre-half who can also play left-back. He's a very decent pro, and again 3.5 star ability. It's just that they're going to be on the decline soon. A ball playing defender, so hopefully we can continue to play good football here. The other one's Nicholas Otamendi. He's 36 and retiring at the end of the season, and he's an excellent centre half, but that pace is pathetic and probably can't cope in the Premier League. Let's look at the left-back area. There's 3 at the club. One of them's Riedewald, who's at Palace at the moment. He can play centre-half naturally, so that eases my concern slightly there. Very much one of those versatile squad players you need across the club. We've got Jamal Lewis, who'll be the first choice left back. He wants a chance in the first team. Why on earth isn't he playing in the first team? He's a player with a resolute personality. He's Northern Ireland's first choice left back. 3.5 star ability, 3.5 potential, 26 years of age. He's quick, He's athletic, he's agile, he's decent defensively and okay mentally. You couldn't ask for much more in a fullback, and he's very much going to be our first choice for the rest of this season. The other one's Federico Rica, who just looks like a solid backup. I can see why he might play in some of those big away games where you need a really defensive pro, but he's certainly not as good as Lewis going forward. The other side at right back, we've got Nathaniel Klein, who's very much on the way down now, but he's still a decent pro and can do a job for us. And then Alice Mataju, I think that is. He's a 3-star right back and he looks a really solid pro. He can play equally comfortably on the left and can also go to right wing back as well, which is something we might want to think about moving forward. But certainly plenty of options and versatility. It looks like he's on a transfer list, so one of our first actions will be to take him off. When we come to a club, we can take people off the transfer list, but if our director of football then still accepts an offer from one of the wanted clubs, we can't do anything about it. We've got one excellent holding midfielder in Douglas Luiz, 3.5-star ability, the same potential now, he's 26, a segundo volante or a deep line playmaker, certainly a very exotic role at the club. Something we did at Barnsley with our holding midfielder, we could consider doing the same here, dropping in and collecting the ball from the keeper, but he's really solid across the board and knows how to defend as well, which is key. He's come from Hamburg via Watford, so he's got plenty of Premier League experience. I'm really looking forward to managing him. We'd like to have a bit of craft in our side. The other one's Danilo, who seems like a perfect replacement for him. He plays exactly the same role, but just isn't quite as good at it. So hopefully he'll be able to do well, as long as he's happy being a rotational option. The other ones in central midfield, moving forward a bit, is Christian Rivera. He's a 3.5-star central midfielder. Another one that's more defensive minded, but he's got a good mentality and could be a useful player for us this season. Certainly we want to have at least one who's going forward from the midfield pack. That could be Radi Krunic. He's a 3-star 31-year-old Bosnian, but again he's just over the hill and probably isn't quite good enough to dominate games at this level. I'm certainly looking at that area as our possible weakness, because even the attacking midfielders we've got, a Gylfi Sigurdsson who's 35, he's probably still the best of the bunch going forward at the moment, but he's certainly not going to be good enough after this season physically. His natural fitness is helping him, and technically he's still wonderful, so he might be my first choice for the rest of this year. We've also got Ayoze Perez. He's 31 now, but he's still a decent pro, but not good enough for the first team. And the wages some of these boys are on, we really need to get them out of the club. Cole Palmer, he's a 2.5-star 22-year-old midfielder, has reached his potential and he isn't very good, so he'll be going out on loan in January, as long as our director of football can find him a move. Let's look at the two wings though. That's a position we were particularly excited. On the right wing we've got Daniel Arzani, a 3.5-star right winger, determined personality, can play as a natural in the number 10 role as well, but his attributes are very much those of a winger. He really looks like a good player and he's going to be playing for us first choice. Worth 30 million, a 25-year-old Australian international, scoring at 1 in 3 for them, and we want to make sure he can do the same here. Very much excited about that, and his backup is Adriano Levinas, who we looked at in the last episode, a 19-year-old with 3-star ability, one of those with the Wonder Kid tag, and he's going to get his opportunities in cups and league games as well. Very much trying to get in football this year before he can hopefully stake a claim for the first 11 next season. With all our number 10s aging or retiring, we could then move the Australian winger into the middle and have this guy on the right. So it's very much looking like a 4-2-3-1. Can Douglas Luiz play in central midfield as well? He can't. Can Rivera play in a holding role? Yes, he can. So it might be a 4-2-3-1 with 2 holding midfielders, or we'll have to be asymmetrical again. We'll see how it works out. On the left wing, we've got 2 players I'm really excited about. Alex Iwobi, who again can play on the right. He can play a little bit deeper in midfield as well. And he's a really good pro. 70 caps for Nigeria. The star player at the club. The highest paid, highest star rating. And the highest value as well. So a really good player who's done well for them. Scoring at 1 in 4 over 85 games. And he's played for City and Arsenal as well. He's got a rating of over 7 this season. I just hope it's not a year for the African Nations Cup, or we'll be losing him in a month's time. The other one is Ante Rebic, obviously a Croatian international, but he's aging a bit now, and he's not quite as good as he is in real life here. He's really struggling in game. He seems to be on the decline already. He can play naturally up front as well though, so could be a backup option there if we're struggling. All of these lads have an awful training rating. I need to work out what's going on there. Obviously it's one of the most important things for me as a head coach, to make sure we're getting the most out of these players, and it seems like the people that are here at the moment haven't been doing that so far this season. season. So we'll try and sort that problem out. We've just got the strikers to look at, and although he's 32, Callum Wilson is still a superstar. He's really good physically, an excellent finisher, and mentally he's strong. Come back from a couple of long-term injuries in real life. Had a one-year spell at Arsenal, but since he's been at Newcastle, he's scored at 1 in 3 over 6 years, which for a player playing in a lower mid-table team is absolutely exceptional. So we've got to think about him being replaced long-term, but at the moment he's absolutely our first choice, with a couple of solid backups in Muto, who's currently injured but a decent pro, and in Haris Seferovic, the Swiss international, 111 caps for them, and a deep line forward, which gives us a different option if we want to play 2 up front with someone alongside Callum Wilson, or if we want to have a replacement in a more defensive game where they mark the holding midfielders. Almost like a false 9, but with slightly more attacking intent when we get the ball. I can see one player out on loan, Nigel Porter. He's only 2-star ability, but in that number 10 role where we've got ageing players, he's got 4.5-star potential. So if we go and have a look at him, he's going to be a good pro. And if there's an option, we're going to recall him in January, I think. His contract can be recalled. We're going to give him a chance in the first team. If we win those 2 games before the new year, it'll put us in a really solid position where we can do that. So I'm edging towards some variant of the 4-2-3-1, which I hope will work out for us. But let's go and have a look at the league table and our competition screen finally. Obviously, we've just seen the draw for the Carabao Cup semi-final. It's going to be a really tough one, but I'm pleased that we get to manage in one straight away. The board expectation's 4th round, so if we could win this tie, potentially it gives us a bit of an easy win this season. We've lost 4 of our last 5 games, including the last 3, and we're only on 18 points after 18 games, albeit 5 clear of Wolves, who we obviously had an interview for as well. If we finish below Wolves, it will be an absolutely disastrous season, especially after we rejected them to come here. We've got Hull in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. I think they were our next game with Barnsley had we stayed there. So hopefully Barnsley can beat them, lower their confidence and continue their run at the top of the table, and then we'll be able to beat them in a couple of weeks' time. But a very tight mid-table in the Premier League. We're just 1 win away potentially from going 12th, and then 2 defeats from the relegation zone and 19th place derby. Obviously those Ipswich and Fulham games are so important, both in the bottom half, and realistically for us in the short to medium term, we've got to think about catching 11th place Fulham. It's something I don't know that will happen this year, but if we can stay in that pack, rather than worrying about relegation, I'll be happy. I'd said about getting Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup semi-final. They're all the way up in 9th above Arsenal, and they're only a couple of wins behind Chelsea. I don't know what's been going on there. We've got to go and look at their competition history. They were actually finalists of the Carabao Cup in 2021. I don't think they've come down from the Premier League at any stage. If we go and have a look at their overview, they're not. They're an established club here. 11th, 16th, 16th, 16th. And they have got no risk of going down at all. They've got Joe Gomez at 27, an England international, a current player. He's an absolutely brilliant pro. So fair play to Huddersfield in this game. They're doing a cracking job. But obviously we will be back in the next episode for our first game against Chelsea. I won't show the Liverpool one because I'm going to rest players and it's going to be an absolute mauling, so it's pointless. And then we'll come back at some point during January, probably for the second leg of the Cup semi-final if it's still close, and show you one of the games either side. Obviously, providing we do win those 2 games against Ipswich and Fulham, the rest of this season on the pitch could be a boring mid-table season. So it's going to be all about cup competitions, transfers, and seeing what our new director of football can do. Hopefully, we'll be able to introduce you to him in the next episode, although 2 days' time might be a little bit too soon. We'll go and set our chairman to do that in a moment, and then we'll be back in the next episode for that big Chelsea game. But if you did enjoy this episode, please put a thumbs up on the video as always. Many thanks to everyone who interacted with the poll in the last episode and gave me your reasons down in the comments. I really do appreciate it. It's one of my favourite parts of making this content, is having the interaction with you guys down in the comments. Now we've met the Newcastle squad in full, let me know your thoughts on it. Have we still made the right decision, or are we going to live to regret it next season? We'll keep an eye on Barnsley's progress as well. We want to make sure they still go up, but with a new director of football here, hopefully they won't attack their transfer targets. If we sign them all in the summer after they come up, that's great, but I don't want their promotion bid to be halted this season. Subscribe to the channel for daily FM19 content from my 2 long-term stories. Our Torquay series is back tomorrow at 4:30, before we play our first game at Newcastle against Chelsea in 2 days' time. I hope you'll join me again for that one, but a massive thanks for watching this and your continued support with the series as always, and we'll see you next time for our first game at the club.